let's jump right into it. Picture this, the intense, crackling heat of a campfire right at the tail end of the Neolithic Age. I mean, for millions of years, we were completely tied to stone. Literally every single tool, weapon, or scraper we needed to survive was painstakingly chipped out of rock. But around 6,000 years ago, a totally accidental mistake, maybe just tossing some weird, heavy rocks into a roaring fire, literally changed human destiny forever. Because you know what? Those weren't just everyday rocks, they were copper ore. And that one serendipitous blast of extreme heat unlocked a secret the Earth had been keeping since the dawn of time, sparking a massive technological revolution. So, welcome to today's explainer on the Chalcolithic Age, humanity's pivotal transition from stone to copper. Now, imagine sifting through the ashes of those super hot fires. Early humans didn't just find shattered stones. Instead, they stumbled upon this strange, solidified pool of material. It was completely unlike anything they'd ever seen before. It had this unique, shiny luster, it was surprisingly heavy, and most importantly, its physical properties totally defied everything they knew about the natural world up to that point. It didn't take long for them to realize this cooled material wasn't just some neat novelty, it was incredibly functional. Unlike flint or obsidian, which as we know just shatters or flakes when you strike it, this stuff could actually bend. It could be molded. You could beat it over and over again into razor-sharp tools and it wouldn't break. For the very first time, our ancestors weren't just finding shapes in nature, they were literally extracting a base element and totally manipulating its form. This right here is the absolute birth of metallurgy. And let me tell you, it required a massive amount of trial, error, and sheer ingenuity to pull off. Now, here's a really common misconception. This new era did not just wipe out stone tools overnight. Not at all. Extracting and working copper was incredibly labor-intensive, and honestly, the ore wasn't just lying around everywhere. So, because copper was precious and scarce early on, humans relied on a hybrid toolkit. They kept using their tried-and-true stone tools right alongside these brand-new copper ones, and that dual reliance is exactly what gives this period its name, the Chalcolithic Age. It perfectly mashes up the Greek words chalco for copper and lithic for stone. It was this fascinating transition era, balancing a super reliable past with a cutting-edge future. As copper paved the way for way better tools, think axes that could clear dense forests in half the time, or plows that could dig much deeper, human settlements naturally just boomed. We're talking a massive shift from small, nomadic groups to these large, settled agricultural communities. And looking at the Indian subcontinent specifically, this agricultural surplus birthed some incredible, highly localized cultures. Archaeologists track these distinct groups, like the Ahar, the Kayetha, and the Malwa cultures, by their unique settlement patterns and their specialized regional crafts. They were no longer just surviving, they were absolutely thriving and carving out distinct cultural identities. And as these societies moved past basic subsistence farming, they started building out these complex, thriving networks. Because they had real food security now thanks to better tools, not everybody actually had to farm. That is huge. It allowed for the rise of specialized artisans. The absolute hallmark of these Chalcolithic cultures became their stunning pottery, especially the exquisite black and red ware. Master craftsmen were painting these intricate, striking designs, showing us that these vessels weren't just for, holding grain. They were status symbols. They were items of beauty and commerce. Soon enough, trade networks began snaking all across regions, connecting these diverse cultures so they could swap goods and ideas. But digging deeper into the archaeological record, we see that this huge technological leap actually had a darker side. The invention of metallurgy brought along a really stark social divide that just hadn't existed in those older, more egalitarian hunter-gatherer days. All of a sudden, the folks who controlled the copper, the ones who knew how to mine it, smelt it, or trade it, they held unprecedented power and wealth. We are literally looking at the bedrock of social stratification, where a person's worth and status started being measured by hoarding rare, manufactured resources. So, how do we know this? Well, historians use contrasting grave sites as forensic evidence to pinpoint the exact roots of economic inequality. When archaeologists excavate these Chalcolithic burial sites, the story is quite literally written in the soil. In one grave, you've got an individual buried with super valuable copper axes, delicate bangles, maybe even gold beads. But then, just a few feet away, another grave has absolutely nothing but simple, unadorned clay pots. This isn't just a quirk of burial customs. This is hard, undeniable proof of a widening wealth gap. It's a society newly split right down the middle into the haves and the have-nots. Which brings us to the ultimate mystery of the Chalcolithic Age.
Despite the advanced tools, the gorgeous pottery, and the booming trade, a lot of these societies simply did not last. Massive, thriving mega-settlements, like the famous site of Inamgan over in Maharashtra, just abruptly and inexplicably vanished from the archaeological record. So what on earth wipes out such an advanced people? Well, historians are still fiercely debating this, but it generally boils down to three suspected culprits: a severe, prolonged drought that totally wiped out their crops, a drastic climate shift that made the whole region uninhabitable, or maybe fierce warfare driven by that exact same wealth inequality we were just talking about. Even though the Chalcolithic era in these regions only lasted a few centuries before collapsing, its historical impact is honestly off the charts. It was a rapid, highly volatile period, but it laid the inescapable foundation for all of human civilization to follow. By learning to tame fire and literally pull metal out of stone, these ancient people paved the way for the next major metallurgical leap. They essentially wrote the instruction manual on how to eventually mix that soft copper with tin to create bronze, a vastly superior, harder alloy that would go on to build the greatest empires of the ancient world. So I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder. History is almost never a story of clean endings. It's always this messy, continuous evolution. So how exactly did the chaotic, unsolved collapse of our very first copper-wielding societies ultimately pave the way for the grandest ancient civilization the subcontinent had ever seen? The lessons learned from the tools, the trade networks, and yes, even the spectacular social failures of the Chalcolithic Age were the exact seeds that blossomed into the deeply enigmatic Indus Valley Civilization. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, diving into our metallic past. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and I'll catch you in the next one.